Whatever happened to Ox Baker? Are we rolling? Well, hell, tell me something. Oh. When seen afresh and correctly, all complaints are the same. Likewise, all cures. Well, I should say all cure. The human nourishment cycle. Thought is food, food becomes thought. The imprisonment, encapsulation. Those with the least chance of freedom talk the most about it. On a hazy, unmapped road, a traveler halted and asked a stranger, "Does anyone know where this is headed?" Life is tricky, life is sticky, especially if you're human. That's the title. Everyone is mentally in control of themselves, unless they notice it. Then they're not. But hardly anyone ever notices. Make no mistake about it. Speaking of man other than regards his physical habits, automatic thinking is the automatic you. A short story of one man. Lying in bed, he'd wish he was dead. Walking around, he'd feel like a clown. Only when he flew, only then did he know what to do. To be himself, to be alive and feel as a man should feel. Only birds have wings. Men need none. They have a potential consciousness that can soar above all common concerns. Okay, look at it like this. If you're not thinking about you in the conscious sense, you're not you. Not in any real sense. We're a prisoner of food, a captive of breath. But till you realize what's going on in your head, you don't have a useful conception of confinement. The pseudo-traveler's natural protection. If you mindlessly look enough for the train, you'll finally never notice its non-arrival. While thoughts initially give life to consciousness, they can also ultimately suck same from it. As always, depending on your intention. Life not only broadcasts on the frequency that makes you you, but on everyone else's as well, which, if you know the secret, you can also tune into. Certain men have long used physical sleep as a metaphor for man's normal daytime mental condition for the simple reason that it's damn near no metaphor. On city tracks, there are no such things as a train out of control. Life, the original welfare system, the supreme bequeather, the ultimate recipient. If I reminded anyone lately, in case you visually would like to keep track, when two news items are on the same page, the suspicion has been that they're in some way related, no matter how much, at first blush, it may seem otherwise. The flow of thoughts are the ship. They are the icebergs, and can be finally directions to lifeboats, all according to where you're headed. The simple seldom listen to what they're saying till it's done and over. Does that mean that we're all simple? Well, I wasn't going to say that. A zoologist in our viewing audience writes, "Does a zebra plot its next run and turn? No, but is such to be our standard of comparison for man? At least as he could be. As long as life knows what it's doing, and as long as you belong totally to life, what is there for you to know or be concerned about?" The importance in traveling to know what real travel is. Anywhere you go in France, they still speak French. Or, in Italy, there is no cure for being Italian. The ritualism most dangerous to a mystic is ordinary, repetitive thinking. One guy notes, I may not have anything important to say, but I have some real nice gestures. The bad news is that no one can do it but you. The good news is that no one can do it but you. And the best news is that this isn't news to anyone who knows what they're doing. Whenever he'd see the wild, free birds fly overhead, one man would say, "That's where I want to be." And his thoughts would say, "Where's that?" And by the time he'd begun to reply, it was all over. Once again. Equal time. Thoughts respond. We may only be second best, but we're the best an ordinary man has. Simple people's main hobby is each other. The great mythical king would sometimes muse about how surprised would be the trusty knights were they to know how few they truly were in number. But in the wondrous transcendental wars, victory is achieved by but one over but one. Evil is a concept present only in human thinking. And to thinking, evil is what can occur when it's not in charge. Definition: wooden soldiers, those who dress in their race, religion, or nationality. Okay, question: why aren't mystics ever put in straitjackets? Because in their case, they have nothing that needs to be contained. I guess that's why Muhammad dropped in many of his speeches, so I understand, putting in that kind of, putting a little physical stick onto his comments. It didn't work then, and it seems to have not noticeably improved in the last 500 years. 1,000 years. Jesus. Everyone is born into a livable house. If you don't like it there, remodeling won't help. Thoughts and the normal consciousness of man. It's like a tunnel that doesn't exist until a train runs through it. And one man's thoughts finally lash back. Well, if you're so sick of it here, why don't you leave? And God knows he truly wanted to. But every time he'd say that, or almost anything else for that matter, he would instantly and temporarily forget that he wanted to go. The simple have specific complaints with general conditions, and general complaints with specific conditions. None but the few can get all of this sorted out and put together correctly. In a peak one day, life told local conditions. Instead of men talking about being sane and reasonable and normal, why don't you just get them back to mooing and blatting? Thoughts have complaints for the same reason that train tracks have two rails. You can spot the more conscious at tennis, for the ball's never in their court. They won't allow it. Knowing where land is means nothing to the shipwrecked if everyone but you is shipwrecked. Through one man's property flowed a stream which could be seen. But he also discovered a mighty river which engulfed it, which was not visible. I should say not seen, for in fact it was visible if you knew how to look at it. Legend has it on one world that the name of the very first mystical school was, "Conductor, stop that train." The time add up, another view. Though it only takes you a second to do it, it may take 30 years of someone telling you about it before you can. Boy, I told you not to think with your head full. Some things can't be improved upon. but understanding's not one of them. Proverbial wisdom correction. Everyone can shoot a sitting duck, except men seated. This revision reveals the idea to actually be in reference to how men ordinarily deal with the thoughts that ordinarily flow through them, and of course a contrary inference from our special little view. The hunt. There's a wondrous food that can only be had once the chase has ceased. Ordinary men like to join spiritual organizations so that they won't have to fail alone. How to absolutely, for certain, for sure, unconditionally be able to recognize a real mystic. They're the only ones who actually secretly take mysticism seriously. Conversation overheard one night in a monastery. Roll them over in the dark and you can't tell one from the other. You mean thoughts? What else? And finally, okay. All mystical instruction ultimately amounts to no more than a pointing that silently screams out, "Stop that train!" Has anyone ever noticed, for instance, last time when I drew the idea of the automatic pool, the automatic U pool, the U, the house, the pool of you in which everyone is naturally born, and then I drew a vague representation of another pool that we could call the awareness-driven pool rather than the automatic pool. And in the midst of all that, or at the initial heart of it, as a matter of fact, last time I was pointing out that beyond all the complaints that men have, all the cries for answers, for solutions, for cures, for the basis of all of their complaints, specifically once you see it, are moot, impertinent, meaningless, and impossible. Because what men are actually seeking is a drastic movement. That inside that pool, since it is all incestuous, all closed, all self-referential, and that everyone is playing intellectually in everyone else's bathwater, that any idea of a cure, a solution, is just silly. Tonight I snuck it in on the basis that everyone is born into a quite livable house. But if you don't like it there, remodeling ain't going to help. I was hoping that the picturization of that pool, and it's based upon some physical reality, invisible to most people's 2020 sight, but that you would see that all the ideas of men asking for, crying for a redemption or a salvation through religion or through cures, through some sort of mental health or freedom through psychiatry and the psychiatric arts, are predestined to failure, because what they're really asking for is escape from the pool itself. And anything you do in that pool, you can stir up the water and you can change places, and everybody can throw holy water and unholy water on each other. They can throw water on each other and claim it's part of the preserved sweat of Freud. You can do anything you want to in that pool, but that which disturbs man, as it should, is him wanting to be more conscious, and it is each individual person, without being able to explain it, wanting freedom. They want to cease being this automatic them that they are. That's the only reason. That is the basis for men conjuring up the idea of religion, of them pursuing religion, of them pursuing all forms, at least outside the physical realm that's based on sex, but all forms and attempts at self-improvement. And it does not work. That alone, remodeling your house there in the pool, remodeling the house in which you were born, will not move you from the house. It will not change it. In the midst of all that, I was commenting again, as I have been wont to in the past, that how all genetically sound people, all sane people, without knowing it, are actually wanting to, making feeble attempts to become more conscious. I keep saying that, and I keep kind of lying. It's just an easy way to put it, and it was initially to distract or to try to make some of you snap to attention and realize that inside your own mind you're continually criticizing. It's no big secret. I didn't discover that. People are out fighting wars, believing it's between Christians and Jews right now, between Jews and Muslims, between Protestants and Catholics. If they didn't get their suits dirty, psychiatrists would actually be out fighting. Different schools of psychiatry, they just wage theirs on the printed page. They attack one another's reputation rather than each other physically. But the idea, I was trying to, initially, as I said, snap you out of and make you realize that you continually criticize the automatic you. Your thoughts, to some degree, are continually involved with the criticism of life. And in most sophisticated people's case, they have quite specific CARPs criticisms. It could be nationalistic, could be racial, could be religious, could be cultural, could be sexual. But it's normally, you find it within the realm of nationality and religion, that they take the real mental shots at one another, that your thoughts are continually criticizing, and it can seep into politics nowadays, which is just an offshoot of both of those, but that you will hear the president make some speech or the leader of the Christian Democrats make some speech, and your thoughts will just take off on how the government should go back to being socialist. I was trying to get you to realize that in a sense, and trying to point out that there is groundless, as far as there being any useful purpose to the criticism that everyone's thoughts, the house in which you were born, put it that way, the pool, the area into the individual automatic you pool in which you were born was Italian Catholic, or it was French Protestant, or it was French Catholic. And right there in the house, and don't look to your parents, don't look for a cause, screw a cause. And that's the kind of thing that you'll stay there beating on the water the rest of your life and kicking it around and whipping up on it. Just look at it. As far back as you can remember, you had thoughts, criticizing people, finding fault with people. The specifics of it are absolutely irrelevant, but I keep pointing it out that it's irrelevant, and I keep throwing in this kind of soothing that it's all no matter, because what people are doing in their feeble way. And as I'll oftentimes say both, I'll say that they want to be more conscious and they're making feeble effort to. All right, all sane people, the first part is still valid. That people, because life is, wanting to be more conscious. But insofar as people attempting to, and me being so magnanimous, me being so big, boom, 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 hearted, me being the kind son of a bitch that I am, always concerned about the feelings of others, especially our less fortunate friends, people who can't think, ordinary people. In spite reason I continue to say about that people are making feeble efforts. You know I've been lying to you for a reason, as I said, to kind of distract you and get you over the hump. But the majority of people are not making any effort to be more conscious. Now I'm still talking about, I'm not talking about the fringes and the criminal and insane elements of society, of the mass parade of humanity. I'm talking about ordinary people, your mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and etc. They are not making any real effort. It is very rare that people make any real effort to become more conscious, to escape the confines of what they automatically are. If asked about it, they will, as they're supposed to. They will pay some, that means lip service. I guess lip service, actually saying it sounds better than they will pay lip service. They're supposed to. That's one of the signs of civility, is while you're doing something absolutely uncivil, for someone to look over your shoulder and say, you know, you shouldn't do that. And you'll momentarily go, you're right, and then go back to doing it. You're supposed to admit, yes, I shouldn't be doing this. Then someone says, you should do better. And you go, you're right, now leave me alone. That is a sign of civility. But insofar as making effort, brother may keep talking and distract you and you listen to me. Think about it a second. Think about anybody you want to, you're close. Just think about humanity in general. good, sane, ordinary, middle class, upper class, just the heart of humanity, what efforts do people make to actually become more conscious? Are you having a difficult time as I am responding to that question? They do engage in ritualistic behavior, as I was laying the groundwork a few nights back, that people, if asked, could say, well, I am attempting to be if they took my turn, which I have in the past pointed out to you that in one sense, if someone was actually pursuing vigorously, personally, a religion, any of the religions, they would in fact, perforce, be attempting to become more conscious. Or put in other ways, I put to you, if a man was more conscious, if he was in charge of his memory, the idea that you cannot actually be a practicing Christian, Jew, or Muslim, or Buddhist is bullshit. And people know it. They're not going to stand for you pointing it out. You shouldn't be doing it. But if someone, when you say, well, why are you lying again? Why are you lying when you know you shouldn't lie? And you go, I know it. And you go, well, you mean you can't refrain from lying? Well, yeah, I can, but I just forgot. Well, there you are committing adultery again. You're going to ruin your marriage? Well, besides that, you're supposed to be a Catholic. You're supposed to be a Christian. A Jew, you're not supposed to commit adultery. I know it. So you mean your sex drive is so overwhelming that you cannot refrain from jumping every person you see that will drop their pants? Well, no, certainly. I got some control. Well, why did I find you here doing it again? I don't. Well, and what they say is, well, I wasn't thinking. And you can say, well, there it is. If you could think better, if you had some control over what you call thinking, you could live by the 10 Commandments. What's the big deal? You're going to tell me you can't do it? So I've tried to establish for you that people can, that was the other side of it, that if they did, which they can, but the point here being, if they did pursue faithfully in some more alert manner any religion, they would be struggling to be more conscious. They wouldn't have to ever hear the term or be aware of it. But do they vigorously, do they sincerely, do they attentively pursue a religion? Not hardly on your grandmother's bustle. You know they don't. But, let me refer you back to several nights ago, ritualism serves a purpose. The ritualism of all religions and of nationalistic, patriotic, and cultural organizations and norms also. But in religion, ritual serves the purpose of quickly distracting one from the initial aim for which the rituals were conceived. That is, I'll do it again, but you should know it by now, and plus you've got your own religion and doing the same crap inside of your own thought processes. But if a person says, I attempt to be a good Catholic. And of course, and remember, I'm just making this up, and if you ask them one or two questions, you can point out to them that, well, you're failing miserably. I mean, they'll be delighted for you to help them out in that manner. That is, if you say, well, are you actually a good Christian? Can you keep the 10 Commandments or the Golden Rule? And they will go, well, no. You go, what the hell? Why do you keep telling me that that's a big part of your life and that you put forth sincere energy to be a Christian? Why do you tell me that? If you went through the process I did, you could talk to somebody and say, well, tell me your biggest sin. Tell me your biggest shortcoming. And they say, my temper. It's my temper. You're going to say, in other words, your temper, you could almost narrow it down, your temper is the thing, the stumbling block between you and being a good Christian. And they could think, oh yeah. Now I could describe it in other ways, but I could take the whole thing of my temper, and that cuts through about at least half or more of the 10 Commandments that I kind of spill over and step on them in a secondary manner. But yeah, my temper. And then you say, okay. So your temper is so maniacal, so uncontrollable. They go, no, I didn't say it was uncontrollable. So I can say, all right, when's the last time you were mad to the point that you thought it kept you from pursuing a Christian life? And so he says, well, when so-and-so, when somebody pulled out in front of me, as a matter of fact, coming over here 5 minutes ago, somebody pulled up, and I was cursing and screaming. And I said, well, did you keep it up? Well, no, I was over in a minute. And I said, all right, think back right now. This kind of thing has happened all through your life. When the guy pulled out right quick, if we could have slowed down time, he just pulled out right quick, right? Yeah, well, sure, I wasn't expecting it. That's what made me mad. If I had seen him, I wouldn't be mad. But he almost hit me. I almost hit him. He went, and it just happened. I thought, well, you goddamn, idiot. And you go, all right, what if, right when he pulled out, what if we could have stopped time including you, for a second, is your temper such that if we could have stopped that and given you, well, whatever time you need, let's say 15 seconds, which is silly, 2 seconds. If we had been stopped it, could you have refrained from going, well, you goddamn idiot? You go, well, yeah. So, since we're not playing science fiction, we can't. Life's not a film. I hate to keep lying to you people, but I can't. I'll get to that some other night. Since life is not a film, and we can't. Well, at least I admit when I have to tell you a tale for your own good. It's not for your own good, it's for expediency. I'm trying to get through with the night. So since we can't stop the film and stop time, then I asked the guy, since it's not just science fiction, so I could say, all right, now you're intelligent, okay. So in other words, if you could sort of slow down your reactions when a guy pulls out right quick, if you could just kind of slow it down just inside of you, then you have the power not to scream at him. And any sane person will say yes. Any ordinary person will say yes. It's just that it all happens so fast. Yeah, it sounds neat. It all happens so fast. That's one description. Here's another description. You have so little control. He'll be very delighted for you to point that out, of course. You've made a fast new friend. No, you won't. No, you won't. But since men can be made to see, since they understand that they're not going to do what it would take to be a Christian, and there's also the sense, because life has it, well, I don't know why I keep talking about men, it's just to make you guys happy and not spook you too much. Make you sound like that men do have some sort of responsibility and some intelligence. Pardon me a minute. There is a sensation in man's nervous system that he is not going to fulfill the requirements to be a good Christian, Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, etc. So, but life has still got that urge. It is running up everyone's nervous system like a little spring plant. It's trying to push up. It succeeds eventually. It moves, but at such a slow rate that inside of one individual lifetime, the progress of life is of no consequence. It will not move you personally, individually. But since life is doing that, there's also already the sensation in man that he is not going to do that which it takes to be a Christian or a Jew or Buddhist. In other words, he is not going to make the effort that it takes to be more conscious, be more attentive, be more in control of himself here. He will not do it. He cannot do it. Any explanation he wants, he knows he is not going to be able to do it. So he finds a place that seems to be or share a common interest that seems to be an institutional version of his interest, normally religion. So he takes up with the religion and he expresses some comment like, I don't like the way I am. And all religions say, you're in the right place. Which is weird to think about. We'll do that some other time. You missed it. You don't like that, do you? See, you're so used to it, you forgot when you show up to this magnificent building with these magnificent people, with these magnificent clothes on, these magnificent artifacts, the magnificent steps, the magnificent sun and the clouds behind them. And you say, I'm searching my father or my rabbi or my so-and-so. And he goes, yes. You go, I am absolutely dissatisfied with life. And he says, you've come to the right place. At one translation, it sounds just right. You're used to it. You've come to the right place. Think about those exact words, and you can translate them a different way. Men have the sensation already inherent that they're not going to do that which is required to make them more conscious, so they find an organized activity apparently involved with the same, which I point out in one of tonight's news items. Men will join gleefully, happily, they will join spiritual organizations and institutions, groups, so that they do not have to fail alone. They will take up with a religion, some organized public operation, and the first thing that's offered them is ritual. And without understanding, again, it's life running it, knowing what it's doing, men will then substitute, they will accept the rituals for the knowledge that they were not going to pursue, much less achieve the aim. It's not weird, it's not a conspiracy, it's childish, it's crude, but it fucking works. I'm sorry, friggin' works. strange on the cable stations, they don't complain in L.A. They don't complain in New York. Last I heard, they didn't complain. I think it was in Oregon. Was that somebody at one of the cable stations just said, "He sure does say fuck a lot," and laughed. Frig a lot. The rituals become the aim itself. Having said all that, back to where I started, it is somewhat disingenuous for me to even encourage people, for me to keep saying, well, ordinary people, your mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, etc. The sane people, the ordinary, the decent people of the world, in their own way, in their own feeble way, do want to be more conscious. They want to do better, and they, in their own feeble way, make some effort. The second part is somewhere between specious and spurious. It's more specious. Because you think, well, aren't they go to church? Many of them go to church, and as feeble as the effort may be, and you could even refer back to me and say, well, you've even pointed out that those kind of rituals were originally intended to focus one's attention, to make one aware of the fact that he is out of control consciously, that there is nobody there, that man seems to be home and yet not at home at the same time, that he has no ordinary control over his thoughts, and that the such things as prayer, that's exactly what they were initially intended for, to produce that awareness and then to help focus one's attention. It was like the diagnosis of the ill, a prayer, some of them, and also an attempted simultaneous prescription of how to go about trying to redeem oneself from this ill, from this shortcoming. I've even said all that, but it is still somewhat disingenuous to continue it. Because our people who go to church, our people who go and light candles, our people who give 10% of their salary faithfully or large sums of money to their church, who fulfill all sorts of holy days and obligations regarding what you eat and what you don't eat, what you wear, what you do for entertainment, people whose lives seems to be centered around some religion. Is it still valid? Am I being genuine to say that, as feeble as it is, they're trying to be more conscious? I'm sort of tired of lying about it. That doesn't even qualify as a feeble effort. I ask you again, I still got a few minutes on the other watch, if you'd like to ask yourself again, from your own vast awareness of the goings and comings of humanity, do you think that many people are engaged in any real individual effort to be more conscious? All right, both of them. Still no go. If we were psychologists, which again we're not, but I'll use these kind of terms, you would say that men have come to a kind of, through the auspices of life, the kind overseeing of life, parking everyone in the right place, getting you at the right end of the pool, giving you little water wings and saying, here they are, and you go, those are neat. What do you call them? And he goes, well, in your case, they're Helen. And in your case, they're Bob and Billy. Life oversees it, and it's almost, though, if we were going to use those kind of psychological descriptions, that men have individually come to a working compromise. That they can sit there on the couch, or go to movies, but let's say sit there on the couch since everyone slams TV. God knows it certainly doesn't deserve it. That a man can sit there, or a woman, and sit there hour upon hour letting someone else do their automatic thinking. And sit there, and if their mother or their minister or rabbi or neighbor says, why don't you ever try to improve yourself or do something? The guy go, I go to church. Yeah. Now get out of the way, I'm watching that. You're way of the screen. Now, of course, I can make it sound a bit humorous. It wasn't an attack on that kind of life, but that is, would you not agree? How about that? I'll put part of it on you. Would you not agree that covers a wide percentage of humanity. Again, we're talking about sane, ordinary people. And if you thought that was too much of a low-class shot, we could take people in higher so-called socioeconomic brackets, take educated people that, in fact, will brag at cocktail parties that they don't even own a TV. And what do? And you could say, well, what do you do to improve yourself? And they could say, well, I do not sit home and watch TV. I've already pointed out to you, I go to concerts. I read books. I keep up with and I see all the latest movies, not trash movies, but movies that the critics say have some artistic merit, that may have some deeper metaphorical reflection upon the general nature of man. I go to museum openings, and all that may sound to be all right. But do you think that has anything to do with being more conscious? If you do, you belong at a museum opening. Yeah. You may belong in one, but that's another story. There is almost no effort individually by people to be more conscious, which is simply to say, to bring their intellectual life, their thoughtful life, under some awareness. So you can screw the idea of control until you have an awareness, a kind of continuing awareness of what's running through this tunnel right now. The waves washing right through your culvert. The horses hurling right through your downtown street. Without any awareness of that, there's nothing. Without the continual or fairly continual awareness that you have no continual awareness of that, till it finally, it may take you 5 minutes, it may take you 30 years, that you go, well, wait a minute. That is the problem. And then you go, if nobody's around, you go, I knew that. Just kind of as a joke, just kind of a good-natured joke to yourself, since you know that you didn't and you feel somewhat embarrassed. It took you 30 years of knowing it to go, well, damn, that is it. But then usually, go ahead. Well, if you didn't think about doing it, or if you don't, go ahead, I'm giving you permission now. Tell yourself, just make sure, go, I knew that. And then you and your stupidity can kind of laugh and go, relieves the tension, in case you want your tension relieved. Wooden soldiers. Nobody liked that definition, did they? There is almost no one on this planet at any given time actually involved with trying to do this thing. For those who might be tuning this in, I don't know how many more times to give various previously used descriptions, analyzations, translations of them, adding my own about what this is. But it's the basis of that which makes man unsettled. We're not speaking physically, although it's tied to it. Nothing is separable from that. But it is the very thing that makes man man. It's the very thing that makes man curious. It's the very thing, this is the basis of man being conscious at the automatic level. That as soon as he's conscious, he's not satisfied. That's an old story. People that, you don't have to be involved with this kind of activity. Those stories have been written throughout the ancient myths, all through all religions, up until today's fiction, and by people constantly who've got no idea what they're doing, which doesn't change its effect, which doesn't change what you can get from it. But it is the metaphor that once you're conscious, there's the problem. The obvious one in the West being the tree of knowledge. Adam and Eve were doing fine. Everything was, they were grooving right along until they ate something from that damn tree, which is to say they became conscious. And as soon as they were conscious, what happened? They weren't satisfied. It doesn't take any time. As soon as you're conscious, you're not satisfied. Which, of course, is why zebras and hippos do not have any kind of psychosis or feelings of personal inadequacy or worry about their self-image. They got no consciousness. But as soon as you got consciousness, you got all kinds of new vistas and possibilities, you might say. But beyond all those possibilities out there, you got one immediate thing happens. You could say one immediate problem. As soon as you're conscious, you're dissatisfied. Now, having repeated that 3 times, here's the way I wanted to say it, but I want to make sure you understood. As soon as you're conscious, you got a problem, because what you want is to be more conscious. Except people don't look at it that way. But all ordinary people would buy my first description that as soon as you're conscious, you got one problem. You're not satisfied. And any sophisticated, ordinary person on this planet would agree to that. Even if I had to stop for a second and give them the Adam and Eve story, or come up with one of the fairy tales or one of the Greek myths, that as soon as a man gets conscious, has some self-awareness, he's dissatisfied. It's like going from an animal, which was no reason I threw in the little thing about hippos don't have self-image problems or no psychosis, no neurosis, for one reason: they got no consciousness. You can't be mentally ill without a mental. You can't be consciously disturbed without a conscious. So, as soon as man's conscious, you got a problem immediately, and that is you're dissatisfied. Ordinary people will go, that's true, that's true. They're not going to change their life, but they would understand that much. But if I said, as soon as you're conscious, you got a problem, and the problem is you want to be more conscious. The sentence rhetorically will diagram, but they go, well, what the hell does that mean? Which is why you never hear Christianity or any of the religions or psychology, you never hear it described as bluntly as I put it to you many times before, and real bluntly last time with my pictures of the pool, is all of them are after one thing. If you were actually a Christian, you'd be more conscious. If you're actually a Buddhist, you'd be more conscious. If you're actually a Jew, you'd be more conscious, and etc. If you were actually whatever psychology or psychiatric, I don't guess they got a term anymore if they ever did. If you were perfectly mentally healthy, if you were freed from all unconscious traumas, I guess they might go with that. Then they don't have a name for it after that because they don't think about it. Well, they don't think about it because there's a name like cured. What it means is, it's like a sign flashes in their head, patient lost, patient lost. Income down, income down. That's a crude way of putting it, but totally fair. Well, they can't help it. Life made them do it. But at any rate, the purpose of all religion is to be more conscious. The purpose of psychiatric analysis, the purpose of all introspection, the purpose of all these so-called occult arts, people trying to chart their horoscopes, people changing their names so that it'll numerologically add up to a different number, whatever the hell else they do. People believing that they're trying to talk to the dead. All of that is an attempt to become more conscious. And normally I say, well, they're doing their best. Yeah. God damn, if that's their best, folks, consider where that puts you. And you think, well, I'm sinking. I just don't seem to, sometimes I feel like I'm swimming in overly chunky and thick peanut butter. Yeah, I know. But I got news for you. Look around out there in that ocean, and if you think, oh, woe is me, I'm getting behind, or I'll never amount to anything. That may be true. You say, I'll never amount to anything in this kind of mystical activity. That may be true, but I tell you this, you're not going to look bad by comparison. Because once you look around out there in that great peanut butter ocean, the great ocean of glue, if you look around, I got news for you. You're not going to see anybody else. You're just going to have to take my word. Well, some of you may think you see one or two other people. But normally speaking, you're not going to see anybody else. That is, if you got the ability to see what you're doing, which now we've got to back up and say you got the ability to see that you normally don't know what you're doing, and at the times you can. Conductor, stop that train. And you look around, there's nobody else in the station trying to stop the train. You're out there all alone. But of course there's that built-in, remember, that built-in traveler's safeguard. That you go, Jesus, that's weird. And then they're all back. You're surrounded by friends. You know they're there because you can hear them mooing and bleating. Meh. The internal individual purpose, if there was one, of me tonight trying to confess away my misdirection, cleanse myself of my prior sins, of pointing out how all ordinary people want to be more conscious. Life wants to be more conscious, but as far as ordinary people, bless their souls, and them engaged in certain religious and charitable activities, or even attempting to go to counseling so they can be a better parent or better mother or father, as far as that being any actual effort, it is not. It is not. And the idea that everyone's engaged, that I put it this way, that all sane, ordinary people, no matter how low level, no matter how feeble, that everyone's engaged in an attempt to be more conscious. No, they're not. Life is, but there are very few people, very few, actually making effort. And if you don't know how few are you? How many times a day can you stop that train? How many times a day are you aware that you're conscious? All right, how many times a week? Let's try it that way. Any hands? Any liars? Any liars? As I said, if there was, assuming that there's one or two hidden purposes in this, and me pointing out, which you do know it wasn't to attack other people. God, don't you wish attacking other people was worthwhile? Don't you wish that'd do some good? It just suddenly struck me after all these years in that particular way, of me always saying, well, not to attack other people or religious people or ordinary people. You know, that criticism is a waste of time. But I suddenly thought, God damn, don't you wish it wasn't? To where you could just bit your way to enlightenment. Damn, where did we go astray? Carp your way to awakening. Of course, now I think about it, that's not original worth a damn, is it? That's what everybody does already. But I was just thinking it's a shame on a higher, more realistic level. It is a shame that bitching about other people rather than me taking up and saying, well, I'm not picking on them. Don't you wish picking on them would make you more awake? Yeah, don't you? At any rate, there's one or two purposes that I had sort of hidden behind all this individually. One being that, just literally, I'm pointing out to you, it's not to make you feel like you're part of some special class, because you may not be just because you're watching this show or being here. But I've said this before, but I'm just telling you point blank. Humanity in general, to say the very least, humanity, people are not involved making any individual effort to be more conscious. No matter what they call it, people, the most faithful Catholic, is not, attending Mass 3 times a day, they are not making any individual effort to be a Christian. That is, to be more conscious. People who are kosher, it could be the kosher poster boy, just fanatical, make the Orthodox look liberal. They're not actually trying to be more conscious. That's why they do that. That's not the reason. We've been through that. They simply are not. People who think they're engaged in reading books on self-improvement, how to treat your fellow man better, people who are actually involved with charitable works right this second, they are not. And they could be out there doing without, giving their money to the poor. They could be out there trying to help other people physically, spending their time. They are not individually attempting to be charitable. Because to be charitable, to be more conscious. There are few people at any time on this planet attempting to do it. It is not the norm, to say the least, and there are many people talk about it. It's a very popular subject, and I'm not kicking religion outside the field of the public, of the common connections to this. Most people claim they're religious, so most people, if you describe being more conscious in a slightly less abrasive way than I have done tonight, they would go, yeah, that's what I am. I call it being a Christian or a Buddhist, but yeah, it would be to be more conscious, to be more aware, to be enlightened as to the nature of life, to the concerns of others, to other people's problems. Yeah, that would be to be a better Jew or a real Buddhist. If you want to call it being more conscious, yeah, you're right, that's what I'm after. But what they're doing is not individual effort to pursue that. It will not affect it. It will not affect it. It will not bring it about. It doesn't do anything because they are not making individual effort. They are operating on the basis of the automatic them. People who are charitable got no choice. People who go to Mass 3 times a day have no choice. Ask them. What happens if you don't go if you're sick? God, I feel miserable. Weren't you going to Mass praying for a long time that your husband wouldn't die, that was suffering that illness? Yeah. Didn't you light candles? Didn't you sell everything you had and give it to the church? Yeah. And what happened? Didn't he die? Yeah. Well, doesn't that discourage you or something? Of course, I'm making this up. We wouldn't do this to anybody, but it happens in life, and somebody will momentarily go, yeah. And maybe it's just two friends. I'm not saying that me or you do it to somebody, and just two people talking. Two good Catholics. One say, well, when something like that happens, it's almost enough to shake your faith, isn't it? And they go, yeah, it is. But, you know what that means? That means, well, I can't stop. I've got no choice in what I do. In other words, they're saying, well, that almost after you did all you did, all you gave, all you suffered, and your husband still died, with all the people praying for him and the priests lighting candles, well, isn't that almost enough to make you leave the church? And they go, what they're saying in essence is, well, yeah, it is, but I can't. Sure you understand by now. People who are charitable have no choice. People who are good, who are practicing anything, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, people in analysis, people in counseling, they've got no choice. That is not effort. And it's not a sermon from me, and it's not some attack from me. I wouldn't tell ordinary people that because it's not true in their case. They can't do anything with it. It's a waste of time. And there are very few people that can hear it and it's anything other than just maybe entertaining. Or the people hear it and think, regardless of my caveats, they still think, yeah, sock it to them. Very few people can find, you don't have to look at Catholics, Jews, psychiatrists, you don't have to look anywhere. You can stay home in a dark closet. That can be your great trek to enlightenment. Your Buddha tree, your Bodhi tree. It is the cross. It is the star and crescent. It's the Star of David. It's everything you want. You can sit right there because Muhammad's caravan, Jesus and all the disciples, Moses, and every Jew in the world are going to run right through here. All you got to do is sit there with your knees up under your chin in a dark closet, and they're all going to run right through here. Buddha will come stumbling along. Everybody. The whole world comes stumbling right through here. And that's when you realize none of these people going through here are making any effort. You always thought it was out there. But then you realize, well, when I'm not aware that it's all running right through here, I'm not what? Let's see. How will I put this? Or for one thing, you're not there. You are not you in any sense of being a you. You cannot be a Christian, you cannot be a Jew unless there is a you to be one. And a you to be one would have to be doing it willfully. That is, you could refrain from doing it. You chose to do it. You do it for a reason that you understood, which, by the way, you do not find people know what they're doing in any church. Just to clear that up, you do not find them in analysis. I don't know where you find them. Check dark closets at your house. Well, I don't mean to frighten you because there are not that many, but just, you never can tell. They got to be somewhere, so there might be one in your closet at home. The other part that I was trying to slip in behind the scenes in this is this should also, or could, give you some another usable approach to reminding yourself of what's going on. That is to remind yourself that there is nothing out there to remind you. You are about as lone attempting to do this as you can be. And it's not sad, it's not pitiful. It's good news and it's bad news, as I pointed out, and it's also even better news. The good news is, the bad news is no one can do it but you. The good news is no one can do it but you. But the best news is this ain't news to anybody that knows what they're doing. It's just, it is. But once you know that there's nobody else out there in that ocean. Just trust me. There's nobody you can see You may have friends. You may have acquaintances. But anytime that you are actually there yourself, you look around and there's nobody else there. There's not. They may pop up when you sink back under. They might pop up on the other side of town, the other side of the world. They might suddenly stop that train and they become aware of themselves, their own consciousness, and then they bob up above the water and they look around, except they don't see you. Because 2 seconds ago you were up there looking around and then you went, God, this is, and before you could say weird, down you went. If you don't holler, stop that train ain't going to stop. And you can pray forever. You can try to sabotage the train. You can light candles. You can throw candles on the tracks. You can do anything you want to. But unless you stop that train, the train's not going to stop. In any sense that you are you is a dream. And all you got to do is stop a minute and dream about it and go, well, I don't know, there could be some validity in that. No, there's not. No, there's not. There's no validity to that. Well, is this a trick? No, there's just not any. I just said it, but there's not. Of course, the right kind of potential passenger by then goes, I am being tricked on top of a trick. Yeah, but it's so obvious that it shouldn't fool anybody, right? Well, wait a minute, now you're playing with me again. Oh, no, man, no. No, you took it too seriously. Which I'll conclude by repeating how to absolutely, beyond all this, unconditionally, without any question, how you can spot a real, we're talking about real mystic. They're the only ones that take all this stuff seriously. Nobody else does, or they wouldn't be involved with the stuff that's noticeable. They would not be involved with the stuff that keeps them from realizing that I'm not involved with anything. Go forth and send some more. No more, no more.